You're listening to the Well Led Podcast, where professionalism meets imperfection. I'm your host, Kate Johnson. Each month, alongside longer conversations and my own reflections, I make space for other voices, short contributions from leaders, practitioners, and thinkers who are actively navigating the realities of leading people. I believe hearing a range of perspectives helps. It helps us better understand what good leadership looks like in practice, not just in theory. This month, we're exploring empathy, not as a personality trait or a soft skill, but as a leadership practice that builds trust at work. In this episode, you'll hear brief reflections from 3 contributors, each responding to 2 guiding questions. How do you define empathy? And who taught you to accept empathy from others? And how did that change your leadership? Their responses highlight how empathy shows up in real moments, when leaders resist the urge to fix, choose to listen, and stay present even when it's uncomfortable. You'll hear each voice one at a time, different experiences, different leadership contexts, one shared focus on empathy and why it matters.
Hi, this is Peggy Mark. I am a leadership consultant. I've been a leader for over 40 years in the healthcare industry. I am here to talk about empathy. And I think about empathy and how I might define it. The first thing that comes to my mind is that it's really an ability to see something from another person's perspective and to be able to begin to understand how they feel. It isn't that I have lived their experience or that I ever will or can, in many instances, live their experience, but I can find it within myself to try to understand what that experience is and have compassion for that. And in many cases, be able to just listen well and hear what they're experiencing. There are 2 people in my life. One is my husband. So my husband is a really, really strong leader. He was a CEO in his career. We're both retired from that world now. He identified in me an inability to let people in and an inability to accept other people's caring for me. And I learned from him early in our marriage how to do that because he was good at it. He hadn't always been good at it either. He had to learn. But I was fairly closed system at that time and didn't like that feeling of vulnerability, which goes sometime along with it, letting people know you, letting people in. And I didn't like that feeling. And so I blocked myself a lot. So I didn't feel it. Once I allowed empathy in, once I actually allowed people to even know that I had experiences that might require an empathetic response, um, life became much, much better, much better. The second person that helped me is someone you know, Kate, which was a consultant that we had in the work that we did together, whose name was Norman. And he challenged me on it. This was very work related. So there's like my personal life, there's my work life. And he kind of challenged me on not, just staying protected. And I was very, very protected. And he really helped through the work that we did together. And I know, Kate, you're aware of that work because you participated in that work as well. But to open up again and allow people in and accept the fact that people cared for me and I was worthy of that caring and accepting what they had to give to me. Huge lessons in my life. As I learned to accept that for myself, as I learned to become a person that would let people in and let people care for me, especially in a work environment. So if I'm thinking leadership as in the work environment, empathy is different than everything is okay, or don't worry about it, or I got you, whatever, these kind of pat responses that I was really good at. But really having experienced what it felt like in my heart and my soul to have someone care about me, and try to understand where I was coming from authentically, I gave that back. And it was really important to me because I had experienced it. So I understood at a much different level. I knew intellectually about empathy. I didn't know sort of spiritually about empathy until I experienced it myself and allowed it myself. And then I understood the importance of it and the power of it in healing. And oftentimes that's what we're doing, is we're helping people heal.
Hi, I'm Utkarsh, and I am the founder of Ignite Neurons. I've had a 20-year-long professional journey in which I've had multiple roles and multiple careers. I started as a physical therapist back home in India, went on to work with a Columbia Business School professor for 8 years, and then started to become a coach, and then have spent the last 6 years creating human-led experiences for leaders. Empathy. For me, empathy is not about being soft. It is not about being agreeable or emotional. I don't see it in that way. For empathy is the courage to be present without trying to take control. It is just the ability where you sit with someone's experience without trying to rush it, without trying to fix it, and even without trying to make it about yourself. Empathy is a state of being. And for leaders, that's really uncomfortable. Because our approach to leadership is always defined by how do we solve, how do we decide, how do we move fast. And in a world where speed is almost equated to success, empathy is asking us to slow down. And I feel it really is a big shift, a big mindset shift that leaders must go through to slow themselves down, to be fully present, and to be serving the purpose of that moment. Let me share something personal. For all my life, I used to feel I'm the strong one, the fixer, the dependable one. And I always wanted to fix things for others and not wanting to seek help because it felt to me like I was weak. And there was a phase in my life when I was working with a leadership professor back in 2015-16, when I was professionally very successful on the outside, but started to feel, again, unsettled on the inside. In that moment, they said, Utkarsh, why don't you hire yourself a coach? And I went through that coaching journey, resisted it initially, but then got into that coaching journey. And that somewhere sowed the seeds that in future, 2021, I would become a coach as well. In one of those coaching conversations, I very vividly remember, I was trying to just like explain certain things to my coach because I felt like they were not understanding that how I need a promotion and that's not helping for me and all that. And at some point, I just paused. In that moment, I clearly remember the coach didn't try to interrupt me or reassure me or tell me like, Utkarsh, why don't you do A, B, or C? They just sat there, silent. And they said something around like, Utkarsh, I understand how heavy this is for you. And that was it. There was about, I think, 60, 70 seconds of silence in that moment. And something cracked open. No one solved anything for me. No one fixed anything for me. But for the first time, I started to feel that once someone is fully present to me, I will find the answers. So empathy isn't about the answers. It's about being seen, valued, and heard without being judged. And when you allow yourself as a leader to receive empathy, you become a different leader. And it becomes that you're not performing on a stage, but you're just practicing your leadership skills. You're more grounded. You're more human. And I think that just is a beautiful space for leaders to be. The 5 values that I've lived by in my life, and these values came to me about in 2017-18, were discipline, excellence, freedom, growth, and love. Now, don't get me wrong, these 5 values served me really well over the last 8 years. But earlier last year, in August of 2025, I was with a group of coaches. And as we were reflecting and talking and learning from each other, it came to me that excellence was coming in the way of me being empathetic, and excellence was not serving me well anymore. In that moment, again, something cracked open, and a value that came about was presence. Excellence was replaced by presence, and that presence now allows me to be the human leader that I want to be to my colleagues, my peers, my clients, my coaches, my family, my loved ones, all across. As someone who grew up in India, I get a lot of inspiration from this scripture that we have called the Bhagavad Gita. And in there, that whole scripture is known as the Song of God. And that's Krishna, the Hindu god, speaking to Arjuna, who is in the middle of a battlefield. Now the context, and it's a massive story, but the context is that Arjuna is about to fight and is on a battlefield, but he's fighting against his own family members and brothers and so on and so forth. And he's feeling paralyzed, confused and emotional and overwhelmed. And in that moment, Krishna speaks to him the Bhagavad Gita, the Song of God. But when he starts, Krishna, he doesn't shame Arjun. He doesn't say, Arjun, be strong. This is your duty. Just go and fight it. He just listens. He just sits down and listens. And he allows Arjuna to share his fears, share his grief, share his resistance. And only after Krishna has heard all of it, then he starts to share anything with him. That moment, that time when Arjuna is speaking his own thoughts, is speaking what he's going through, and Krishna is just pausing and listening, that's empathy. Krishna doesn't remove Arjuna's responsibility because Arjuna ultimately has to do the fight. He has to do the fight on his own. Krishna is not going to fight for him. So he understands Arjuna, and that is what strengthens Arjuna. So as leaders, we often skip this step. Instead of trying to understand the other person, we straight away get into solutions. And I think that's where empathy unlocks us as the next level leader. And science backs up empathy really beautifully. It's like mirror neurons, right? There are these neurons in our brain where it's like someone else who's around you and is really angry or is really anxious or is really sad. You'll start to mirror those emotions as well. So the mirror neurons will start to get activated. Similarly, for empathy, if you as a leader is empathetic and not frustrated, you're listening deeply, the nervous system of you and the other person calms. Cortisol, which is the stress hormone, goes down. And oxytocin, which is the trust and the hormone that produces more joy, it starts to increase. Empathy literally creates psychological safety. For me, who taught me empathy? That's a tough question. I think Krishna is one example. I don't think you can learn empathy from books. I think it's a more human-to-human connection. The leadership professor I worked with, he taught me a lot about empathy. My patients, my first role as a professional was being a physical therapist. And so as a physical therapist, when I'm looking at these patients who are in pain, who are in difficult situations, and sometimes even elderly, I think they taught me a lot about empathy. And that was a big shift for me in my journey. My kids, I think, have taught me a lot about empathy as well. And today, after running multiple experiences and experiments over the last decade, empathy is what leads me. I care about results. I am demanding. I hold high standards. I expect ownership. I want accountability. But I start with that before you lead your performance, I want to understand your experience. I want to understand who you are. I want to understand what your world looks like. And this doesn't lower the bar for me or my team. We still produce amazing results. We still go on and do crazy stuff together. We just help rise and help each other rise through being empathetic. And so before I close, I just want to share that empathy is not about being nice. It is just about being real. And the most powerful leaders I've observed, I've known, are not the ones with all the answers, but they're the ones who make you feel deeply seen. That's where trust begins, courage grows, and that's where true leadership truly lives.
Hi, Kate. Thank you for inviting me to share a bit about my perspective and experiences with empathy. My name is Angela Whale. I serve as a vice president and chief nursing information officer at Premier Health in Dayton, Ohio. My leadership journey started pretty early in my career, and I've had more than 20 years of progressive leadership, a leader of nurses, including unit leader, director, and in my current role. When I think about what empathy means to me or how I would define it, I really think about how empathy helps to strengthen human connections through understanding and validating others' feelings and experiences. Really being able to see and appreciate another's perspective. Who taught me to accept empathy from others? That's a tough question. When I think about that question, my best friend comes to mind. I didn't meet her until I was nearly done with nursing school, and we began working together. And so, growing up with two parents who loved me, I know I saw and was taught empathy much before my 20s, but it was most impactful in my early 20s. I think that was because shortly after getting married and becoming a nurse, my parents shared that they were getting a divorce. My parents who had been married for more than 20 years. It was obviously impacting me at work. And I remember my friend coming alongside me, understanding how I was feeling and validating my feelings and appreciating how this was difficult. She didn't judge. She just loved me for who I was and provided support. She showed up in ways that I wouldn't have known to ask for help, but she wanted me to know that she was there for me. And when I think about how I translate that to my own leadership style and how I show up for others, life is hard. And there are people that we work with, people that we lead, who are struggling every day. I want to be a safe place for those people, a safe place for the team to share that they're struggling by providing comfort, that they are seen and heard, that I appreciate their perspective and their experience. But really, when I think about what this looks like in leadership, it's not only the safety that we provide or the comfort that we provide to the people that we work with. It's also about ensuring that we're supporting them in the way that they need. Asking them, what does support look like for you right now? Or how can I best support you through this? I recall a conversation I had with a colleague last week. He called to share a struggle. And in fact, used those words. I'm calling you because I'm struggling with something. And I paused and listened as he was vulnerable with me to share what he was experiencing. And I immediately wanted to respond with my fix-it attitude. I can help you. Thank goodness something told me to pause, to reflect on what he had said, and to ask, what is the best thing I can do for you right now? What are you hoping to get out of this conversation with me? Because my tendency is to jump in and fix it. And that's not what this individual was looking for. I'm looking for comfort. I'm looking for validation. I just want to know that someone else is in this with me too. That's where the connection happens. Our shared experiences, our appreciation for one another. Empathy allows us to be relatable. It allows us to build trust, to live that moment, that struggle with the other person without making it about us. I would also caution that as a leader, it's important for us to know the difference between sympathy and empathy, that we can't take on all of the feelings for that other person, that we're providing support for them to feel their own feelings, and to feel them all the way through, but to not take that on ourselves. One of my favorite depictions of this, of course you'll know it well, is the Brené Brown video, Empathy versus Sympathy. It's about getting down in the hole with someone or not. At the end of the day, for me, empathy is about coming alongside one another. It's about experiencing life together. Brené quotes that empathy is simply listening, holding space, withholding judgment, emotionally connecting, and communicating that incredibly healing message of you're not alone.
You've been listening to other voices on the Well-Led podcast. I'm grateful to each contributor who shared their perspective in this episode and helped expand our understanding of empathy. Together, their responses make it clear that empathy isn't about having the right words or perfect answers. It's about how leaders show up when people are struggling, uncertain, or carrying something heavy. The contributors in this episode responded to 2 questions: how they define empathy and who taught them to receive it. What emerges as a practical view of empathy is something that's learned over time, shaped by experience, and strengthened when leaders allow themselves to be supported, not just supportive. If this episode was useful, you can support the show by following or subscribing on your preferred podcast platform, or by sharing it with someone who's navigating similar leadership challenges. We'll be back next Tuesday with a deeper conversation about empathy and leadership with author Catherine Manning. And before you go, if you were thinking more about trust and connection, there's a free vulnerability and leadership toolkit available at 123 Limited. These worksheets are a useful companion to this month's theme. Check the show notes for a link. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next week.